Welcome back, you filthy exiles. So today we had like another hour and a half of footage drop from a creator called Open World Games. And basically it was like a conference for Path of Exile where they showed off a ton of in-game gameplay. A number of things from that were actually featured in the final video that was announced the other day. But by God, did they go through a ton of information that we didn't previously know, and now we have a ton of leaks and way more information. So in good fashion, I'm going to thread that together in this video, and we're going to talk about all those different things that they spoke about. And yeah, anyway, let's get into it. And also, if you haven't liked and subbed to the channel, or just subbed to the channel, make sure you hit that button down below. And make sure you check out the Twitch, but it doesn't really matter too much. I both cast on both Twitch and YouTube. You can catch me on either moving forwards for Path of Exile 2. But anyway, let's get into the video. Okay, so the first thing off the rank that came out of the video was every single skill in the skill book now will basically have a tutorial that is applied to it, so you'll be able to see what the skill does and how it interacts and what it looks like. This is very different from Path of Exile 1, so it just wasn't something in PoE 1. So this is very targeted at new players moving forwards, and it's just a nice inclusion that they featured. Okay, so the next thing that was sort of cast over was they sort of hovered over some of the other Titan Ascendancy nodes that hadn't been shown yet, and they basically came up with some totally wild stuff, and I'll pull these up on screen now. Okay, so the first node that they showed was Ancestral Empowerment. This one's sort of similar to a skill or ascendancy that was out of the Chieftain in Path of Exile 1, but every second slam you use yourself is ancestrally boosted, and this I think is where you can see, like, this is like the Fist of Wars support gem or something of that nature. And I think you can see like this on the screen when, and I noticed this in the gameplay, like your icon will have like a red highlight on the skill. This is basically how Fist of Wars used to work in Path of Exile 1, and so it does additional damage. The other one is Mysterious Lineage, so 20% more life, or maximum life. That's insane, like that's going to be totally wild. Stone Skin's the other one, so armor from equipped body armor is doubled. This is actually a Juggernaut ascendancy from Path of Exile 1, just reworked. I really like this because it means that the Marauder is just going to be totally different, right? That's going to be totally wild. The next one is Colossal Capacity, and this is the rucksack that was added in as part of a previous league in Path of Exile. Number 1, and basically equip a chest which has 20 inventory slots. So basically you get an extra 20 slots, and it has like an extra window, and it makes sense because this is going to be a strength-based character, right? So you should be able to carry more gear. If that's the case, it's both tanky, can carry more gear, and you know, has synergies with shields and slams. This is like everything you need for the greatest ascendancy ever in Path of Exile. Okay, so the next thing that we found out was also keystones or stones or atlas modifiers that can manipulate the way that biomes work. Now, for anyone who hasn't watched my video, I'll put a link in the description below. Biomes come from Delve and essentially are like, so if you're in a cold zone in the endgame map, you're going to have like a cold biome, specific things will drop, so on, so on. So basically we have this local knowledge node that's been leaked, or that we've found in the screenshots of the footage. People have like just scrolled over it. They haven't really focused too much on it in the actual gameplay that's been sort of revealed. Not sort of trying to elude attention to or drag attention to it, but basically local knowledge. Swamp and water biomes have 40% increased chance to drop basic currencies. Blue mountain or mountain biomes, sorry, have increased gold drop chance. Increased jewel drops drop chance in forest. Desert has increased drop of inscribed ultimatums, and grass biomes have 40% increased drop socketed currency. So this is very similar to how fossils work in Delve and Path of Exile 1 with the biome system. So, you know, you get shuddering fossils in cold biomes and so on and so on. So we can expect that basically being able to juice up your biomes to be able to get, you know, crafting outcomes is definitely going to be a way to be able to increase rarity or targeted drops in endgame mapping. And this is just a mechanic I'm totally behind. Being a Delve player, this is just something that I love. I love the fact that biomes are part of the endgame, and it just takes away the need to muck around with scarabs and all that sort of garbage. that we've had to deal with in Path of Exile 1. It makes the endgame quite seamless and a lot of fun, considering it's an infinite endgame and you're going to see tons of these zones. Especially this is going to be particularly important when taking on boss nodes, which are probably going to have elevated drops anyway and be exacerbated by your Lost Tower modifiers as well. Okay, so we also got another 2 Ascendancy point nodes for the Witch Hunter. Now, I'm adamant the Witch Hunter is going to be a great sword class beyond just like a crossbow class, but No Mercy, where it deals up to 30% more damage to enemies based on their missing concentration. So they introduced a new sort of skill set into, a new ailment into, a new effect on enemies called concentration and concentration loss. So this is going to be really interesting to see how this works. And Pitiless Killer, which is just Culling Strike, which is quite fantastic because there's some really good like Judge, Jury, and Executioner and things like that on the Witch Hunter so far look really good. So the Witch Hunter is very likely going to be like a really like absolutely destruction, like take enemies down really quick sort of build. Whereas the Gemling Legionnaire I feel like is going to be like a tanky, more drawn out sort of ascendancy. And you know that's a really good balance from either end. But anyway, here's some more for you to think about for when you're trying to put builds together. Okay, so another thing that came out of the fully explained video as well earlier in the day was that now Regal Orbs will drop as part of Disenchanting Rares, sorry. So basically before they were actually quite scarce in Path of Exile 1. Now you're going to be able to take magic items and frequently upgrade them to rares quite easily with Regal Orbs, as their availability as a standard drop currency is going to be a lot more abundant than what they were in the previous game. Okay, so the next big thing that they showed was the fact that now Ascendancy skills that are applied in their Ascendancy, so in this case they showed it with Summon Infernal Hounds from the Infernalist class, can now be modified by support gems. So what this means is, you know, the way that I interpret this is, so if we take, for example, Time Stop from the Chronomancer, that means that potentially you could use a meta gem on this to then have it auto trigger on like Ignite or something like that, or on Chill, or on Stun. So essentially you could auto cast Ascendancies now, which, you know, wasn't previously something that you could do in Path of Exile 1. They did try this with a couple of Path of Exile 1 skills, like Bone Armor and I think Radiant Crusader. But this is just something totally new, and the fact that you could do this means you can make some pretty OP Ascendancy-based builds solely. So not like, you know, other skills, you could just take your Ascendancies and then build around your Ascendancies moving forwards, not just for the passive attributes that they give you, but for the active skills that they can actually give you, which could be really cool. So for example, being able to turn into a demon, for example, could be something that you could severely buff up. You know, that's just like one thing that comes to mind. Or for example, with the monk with the avatar form, these are all things that are active skills that you could then basically apply support gems to moving forwards and make some really OP build archetypes based on that. It's just something that is totally unheard of in Path of Exile. I think there'll be some reservations from some people, but I personally think it's fantastic. Okay, so the next thing that they showed off in the footage was jewels. So basically we got to see some of the mods that can roll on jewels now, and it's absolutely nuts. So for example, the one that I that stuck out to me was this Grand Time Lost Sapphire Influence jewel, which by the way, you can roll this jewel, for example, so you can recraft it. But basically you can upgrade it to a large radius, so that's really cool. And then basically it increases the effect of small passives in the skill Radiance. Now, basically this was something that you could do with like, was it Elegant Hubris jewels or Glorious Vanity and things like that in the past. It wasn't really something that you could do with standard like magic jewels. The other thing is like Radius jewels also applied to things like Thread of Hope and all that sort of jazz previously. Whereas I feel like you could probably get jewels where you could allocate passive points that aren't attached directly to the tree. So like, for example, Thread of Hope. But like you could roll that as like a rare or magic jewel. This is just a speculation, but it's very likely that that's something that's going to be added into the game to take it away from being a unique jewel. Like potentially, you know, you could get like, was it Leap of Faith or whatnot jewels, Intuitive Leap, sorry. This could be in the game again, but it doesn't make sense based on these sorts of things. These jewels could be crazy. The other thing that really sticks out to me too is the increased effect appears to hover over all the keystones as well. So this looks like it's or the notable passive, sorry. So it looks like you could buff up your notable passives pretty significantly with the use of jewels moving forwards, which is, again, something that was never done in Path of Exile 1. So there's a lot of real options where you could use jewels to not abuse is maybe not the right word, but severely buff up your builds. The other thing is like stacking builds, for example, or strength or dex stacking builds are going to be totally easy to pull off now because basically you're not reliant on unique jewels. You can craft the jewels that you need to be able to do stacking builds. So, for example, you could probably do strength stackers a lot more efficiently than what you might have been able to do in the past, which is really cool. Like, it's basically making once very expensive builds extremely affordable. Well, hopefully. And the other things we don't really know about, what are the drop rates of these base jewels, how rare are they, but they appear to be relatively accessible, and that's how they played it off in the footage. Okay, so the next one is actually one that older PoE players will know, and I'll put a guessing game up here. So of the two screenshots, tell me which one looks like Path of Exile 2 and which one looks like Path of Exile 1, right? So this is how the new Val Orb corruptions work. Now, it's pretty interesting that the modifier look and also the modifier nature is very similar to Scourge modifiers. This is from a previous league that was in Path of Exile, where you could get corrupted items with, aberrant level of corruptions, far beyond what you could get in the standard corruptions in the base game. So the way that this reads to me is essentially that the modifiers or the testing that they did from Scourge League has sort of echoed into the final outcome for how Val modifiers will work in Path of Exile 2. And this means that you can get like pretty significant percentage buffs, not just like the incremental buffs that Val's used to provide or extra skill sockets or something like that, or skill effects. It's more so the old Scourge mechanic coming back and being applied. I think this was League 3.15, something like that. But yeah, this is a very welcome change because Val was sort of hit and miss. Unless you got a really good mod, it was pretty useless. The other big advantage of Val Orbs they showed is obviously that you can get sockets from Val Orbing your gear, which is going to make your gear a lot more powerful because it's going to allow you to put runes in it. But yeah, the modifiers are basically looking very Scourge orientated, and I like it because it means valing all of your gear, which is going to be a lot more common moving forwards. Is actually going to be a lot more valuable as well with some of the mod pooling that you could get in the Scourge implicits that are looking like they're being carried in a Path of Exile 2. Okay, so this was just a little one that came up in the video that was released. So in map crafting, prefixes are positives on your maps, and suffixes are going to be negative impact modifiers. So they basically said that potentially if you get all prefixes, it's a 2 thumbs up map, you're going to have a good time. And you could also roll a map with all negative suffixes as well. But basically, they just simplifies that system out. So the mod pool makes a little more sense. This is actually a lot more beginner friendly as well. I really like this change. It's just a small one, but it means so much more when you're just blasting maps and you just want to keep progressing on a fluid cycle. Okay, so for those of you who are new to the game and for those of you who are returning, a crafting methodology or strategy that used to exist was ROG crafting. Now, this is referred to as deterministic crafting in Path of Exile and many other games. Now, the system that ROG has is basically you play Expedition, you buy an item from ROG, and he then allows you to modify it a series of times with some set changes, and the outcome could either be really good, it's a little bit random, or it could be really bad. Now, it just depends on the options that you pick. Now, Path of Exile 1, ROG crafting was pretty damn good. Like, you could craft almost mirror tier items or like really good base items to then craft into mirror tier items. And this is returning to Path of Exile 2. So basically, ROG crafting from Expedition is going to be around again. And for anyone who isn't sure what this is, if you have a look at a game called Last Epoch, for example, this has deterministic crafting in the crafting menu. So the Forge, for example, in Last Epoch is deterministic crafting. And if you are acquainted with that game, this is basically the exact same sort of setup. That's how ROG crafting works as well. Fantastic to be back in Path of Exile, and it's just another way to get some of the really good gear early on. If you are playing the game and you want to know how to min and max your builds, this is probably going to be a really good way to do it. So this one is a bit of speculation, but a couple of things was said in the gameplay around this tainted ritual. Now, basically, Jonathan Slipton said, "Oh, this is beyond. Oh, sorry, corrupted." And also the ritual itself is tainted. Now, a couple of things that sort of stick out to me is tainted rituals allowed for potentially, or could allow for tainted currencies, which would allow you to craft corrupted items. And that's also, funnily enough, the same currency that came from Beyond in the reimagined Beyond League, which took the form of the Scourge League, which got converted into Beyond in Path of Exile 1. This one is totally speculatory, but if that's the truth of it, then it's just something that we haven't even learned about yet, and we'll have to discover. But either way, like that, sometimes the devil is in the detail, and definitely the wording was consistent with that could be a possibility. Not proofed yet, but this could be something that could be in Path of Exile 2. Anyway, I thought that'd be a nice little video to put together for some more information that we've learned about Path of Exile 2 just in the last day with the footage that's come out on Open World ARPGs. But yeah, if you haven't seen that footage, by the way, definitely go and check it out. I'll put a link in the description. Or sorry, Open World Games is their channel's name. But yeah, basically, yeah, there's tons of really, really nuanced changes. Now, I'm going to do a video unpacking the leagues and talk about, in particular, I'm going to focus that towards new players. So explaining what Breach is, where it came from, the changes between Path of Exile 1 to Path of Exile 2 to look out for, and to give players an idea of why some of these mechanics are significant in nature. And for the older players, it'll just be interesting to see what the changes were previously and what mechanics have been mashed together to change Path of Exile 2 for the better, to make it a more refined gamer experience. Anyway, if you like this video, don't forget to like and sub to the channel. Definitely check out the streams. I think we had some pretty good streams today, or a pretty good stream today. I'm going to be trying to cover off on as much Path of Exile 2 content as possible. I'm also going to be trying to get shorts out each day as well, moving forwards in the lead up to Path of Exile 2 coming out. So yeah, expect a total crazy amount of shit coming from me for Path of Exile, number 2 that is. But yeah, until next time, I'll see you guys later and have a good one.